Welcome to the Simply Biblical Podcast. My name is Nick Salone. I'm joined by my co-host, Jonathan McAtee. Jonathan, how are we doing today?
I'm doing great. I had a very long drive. Just got back from a vacation with my cousins, which was a ton of fun. Super relaxing, good time. And I woke up early in the mornings, spent some time reading my Bible, and then read about Buddhism, so I'd be ready for today. But it's a good time. How about you? How you doing?
Been good. It's been a while since we recorded, so I'm happy to be recording with you again.
Yes.
But yeah, I went camping this weekend again, and it was good. It was fun. Got to hang out with some pretty cool people, and yeah, just had a good time up in the UP, the Upper Peninsula of Michigan.
Sounds
We
fun.
tried to go fishing, John. We didn't catch anything.
Nick, you're supposed to be good at that. Come on. Did anyone forget a tent this time?
No, thankfully.
That's good.
Yeah, thankfully.
That's good news.
I actually bought a tent, so we had that covered. Had a lot of people on there, but yeah, everybody was more prepared this time. It was good.
Awesome. Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
I'm excited to record again. Yeah, it has been a while. But today we're talking about Buddhism, continuing our series on other religions. And man, this one's interesting. I'm excited about it. But before we get started, we are going to be changing how we are and releasing and stuff like that. From here on out, we're going to be spending some more time with studying and preparing and things like that, which means we're going to upload an episode every other week from now on until the future, if we ever change that. But just so you know, that's the plan. Every other week, Nick and I, we're talking, and we just feel like we need some more time to study and to make sure we are on the top of our game before we come and record. And so we wanted some more time. So we're going to do every other week. Any other thoughts you need to add to that?
Yeah, I think when John and I first got together, that was really the heart of what we were doing. Like, we wanted to learn and to teach as well, and just kind of we got to the point where we felt like we were putting out episodes more than things that like actual good content, and we didn't want to get to that point, so we kind of just readjusted, talked about it, and we just feel like if we have more time to study, especially during summer, I mean, we're both traveling a lot, working a lot, so it's hard to really get in a lot of good study time. And actually learn and just know the material well. And I think learning about the different religions, we weren't able to kind of rely on our just biblical knowledge and teaching that we've learned during school, kind of expose that a little bit more. And so, yeah, we definitely just wanted to address that and not let it go further. So I'm glad that we, talked about it then. And yeah, if in the future we're able to put more time in more consistently, then we will do that. We'll adjust it in that case. But yeah, we just want to be able to put out content for you guys that is good, that we're able to study on a bit more. And also for ourselves, we want to know what we're talking about better for you as well as ourselves. So yeah, I hope that this turns out a little bit better than what we have been doing. I don't think what we've been doing is bad, but it's just not what we wanted to do when we first came with the idea of recording and starting this podcast. So I hope you guys aren't too upset with what we're doing. And we even talked about if we're able to record a longer with all the extra studying that we'll do, that maybe we'll do a part 1 and then a part 2 for some episodes, if it ends up being longer. But for the most part, it'll probably be every other week.
Yeah, that's the plan. We don't want it to be like a test where you take the test, you study real hard before, and then you forget all of it after. So that way we can remember the stuff and keep it locked in here. All right, but today we're talking about Buddhism, like I said. So first we'll go through some history. The Buddha, Siddhartha, he lived from 563 to 483 BC. That is before Christ. So that gives you a timeline of when the historical Buddha was alive. And his parents were royalty. And so he grew up wealthy, But the thing is, they kept Siddhartha from any signs of suffering in the world, like to a crazy extent, which is, it's how the story goes. He didn't see death, aging, sickness, or poverty. And so he was just super confined. And of course, this is how the story goes. It's hard to tell exactly what is historical and what is not, but we're just going with this. And eventually, he left the palace and he encountered 4 sights. He encountered an old man, showing that aging was unavoidable, a sick man, which revealed that illness comes to everyone, a corpse, which made him confront that death is a reality, and a wandering ascetic, which is a holy man who appeared to have peace despite the world's suffering. And so he encountered these 4 sights which changed how he lived and how he thought about the world. Of course that would. If you encounter nothing but just like life and goodness all your life, but then all of a sudden ran into death, that would change everything. And so it did. He left behind his royal life. He left everything behind, and his goal was to discover why people suffer and whether there was a way to be free from suffering. And after years of studying with teachers and practicing extreme asceticism, which we're going to explain some more about what that is, he concluded that neither luxury nor self-denial provided the answer. Instead, he embraced what he called the middle way. While meditating under the Bodhi tree, he attained enlightenment and became known as the Buddha, meaning the awakened one. Do you want to talk about asceticism?
Yeah. Yeah. So asceticism is the practice of denying yourself physical pleasures or comforts in order to pursue spiritual goals. So examples of that are like fasting for a long extended period, living with very few possessions, sleeping in uncomfortable situations, extending periods of solitude, and severe self-denial. So it's pretty easy to explain. It's just anything that you find real enjoyment or comfort in, kind of denying yourself of those. And so in Buddhism, before becoming the Buddha, Siddhartha practiced extreme asceticism. He ate so little that became dangerously thin, believing severe self-denial would lead to enlightenment. And eventually he concluded that these extreme practices, just as John was speaking about, didn't bring the freedom that he was seeking. And then there's also hedonism. And hedonism is the belief that pleasure and the avoidance of pain are the highest goals in life. And so this is living only for entertainment, constant pursuit of wealth or luxury, seeking comfort above everything else. So it's the complete opposite of that. And so Siddhartha, obviously living in the palace, he lived in that extreme luxury as a prince. And so despite having every pleasure available, he found that wealth and comfort just didn't protect from things like sickness or, that suffering that he wasn't exposed to for so long. He realized that everybody, whatever side of the pendulum you find yourself on, you're not going to find true lasting fulfillment, and suffering is going to find you in either way. So he came up with the middle way as one of the first teachings of Buddha, and he concluded that hedonism does not lead to lasting happiness and that asceticism does not lead to enlightenment. So instead, he taught that a balanced path of wisdom, ethical living, meditation, and what we now know as the Noble Eightfold Path, he believed that was the path to enlightenment. Any thoughts on those, John?
I mean, I see what he was saying, because like with hedonism, you get all the things that you want. You're living for pleasure and everything like that. But he's right in the fact that that does not produce ultimate happiness. And once you get all of those things, it doesn't give you ultimate joy. And you can see that with people even nowadays who are wealthy and look like they have everything put together, but it just, they're not happy or joyful, and they just don't have that. So he makes good points, but we would believe, of course, that he comes to wrong conclusions, and we'll get to what those conclusions are. But yeah, I think we can go on to the middle way. So I'll go from here if that's all right.
Yeah.
So, so then he starts to teach his followers to follow in his footsteps to enlightenment. Remember, he reached enlightenment under the Bodhi tree. And so he's gaining some followers, and Buddhism spreads really quickly due to its far-reaching nature. Anyone could obtain an enlightenment, which was huge, especially in that region and that time, because the main religion in this area was Hinduism, which involved the caste system, meaning your social rank was determined at birth. You were born into your social rank, and you couldn't leave it. And so if you were born to the lowest caste, you were stuck. But Buddhism is different. There's no caste system, so the poor and the outcasts could reach enlightenment and be free from suffering. So this made Buddhism very appealing, especially to those in the lower caste. So then for the next 45 years, Buddha traveled throughout northern India, teaching what became known as the Dharma, which means the teaching or the truth, and he gathered a community of followers made up of both monks and nuns, men and women, as well as many lay followers. And his teachings were passed down orally for generations before eventually being written down, yes. And so then around 80 years old, the Buddha died after eating a meal while traveling, and Buddhists refer to his death as parinirvana, which means the final nirvana, because they believe that he finally escaped the cycle of rebirth and would not be born again. And so that he escaped samsara, which is the cycle of being born, dying, going into reincarnation, like that, which we're going to talk about some more. And after his death, his followers preserved and spread his teachings throughout Asia. And over the centuries, Buddhism has spread to countries such as Sri Lanka, China, Korea, Japan, Thailand, Tibet, Cambodia, and even more, where it developed into several major traditions, including Theravada, Mahayana, and a unique offshoot, Vajrayana, and that is Tibetan Buddhism. But we'll talk about that some more, which is, of course, practiced in Tibet. That's,
Yeah.
easy to figure that
And
one out.
so, yeah. The three major branches are Theravada, which they are very heavy in the earliest Buddhist teachings. So they put a lot of emphasis on that, those traditions, those oral traditions and the writings of the earliest teachers in their religion. And then they are predominant in Sri Lanka and much of Southeast Asia. And the Mahayana, they emphasize compassion and helping all beings attain enlightenment. They are predominant in East Asia. And something interesting about them, John and I were just talking about this while right before we were recording, is they believe that you can postpone you entering that final nirvana. And this is just from our understanding. I mean, we could be wrong because we're not scholars in the Buddhist religion, but from what we picked up, that they can postpone their entering of nirvana and become these kind of like these spiritual beings, or they have these spiritual abilities to assist other people to achieve enlightenment. So you can perform certain miracles, appear to them in different appearances or as different figures. You can just do more to help just kind of guide and steer people to that enlightenment to reach the final nirvana. And the Vajrayana, did I say that right, John?
I think so.
They are often called Tibetan Buddhists, and they incorporate rituals, meditation practices, and teachings associated with Tibet and the Himalayas. And so some of the beliefs of the of Buddhists, one is the Four Noble Truths. And so this is one, that life involves suffering. 2, suffering is caused by craving and attachment. 3, that suffering can end. And then 4, the way to end suffering is by following the Eightfold Path. And so you'll notice a common theme of suffering throughout uh, this belief, the religion of Buddhism, just again because of how it originated. It was a huge part of just the origin of it. So suffering is a huge, huge part, and we'll get into that too. Also, when we talk about the witnessing portion of it. But John, would you like to hit the next part?
Yeah. Yeah. So just talking about the worldview of Buddhists, it's very fascinating to me. They view life as ultimately suffering, but it stems from their belief in samsara, which is reincarnation. And the Buddhism actually makes a lot of sense if you believe in samsara, because samsara means that you are constantly trapped in this cycle where you live and then you have sickness and pain and death, and then you die, and then you're reincarnated into that same thing over and over and over. And so ultimately um, there's no freedom from it unless you reach nirvana. So Buddhism actually makes perfect sense, because the idea that craving is bad, it makes sense if you know that you'll never ultimately um, get the thing that you're craving in any kind of meaningful way, because nothing is permanent. That's something big in Buddhism, that nothing is permanent, everything is impermanent, because of that cycle. It's all about the cycle. So then, in order to escape suffering, you must escape the cycle of samsara, and that's the only way to avoid suffering. And as we will discuss, Christianity's message is totally different, and it stems from our worldview difference, mainly because Christianity believes in a creator God and that the universe had a definite beginning. Buddhism would say that there is no definite beginning of the universe, that it goes along with the idea of samsara, that there was always cycles and the universe was a thing, and then it's hard to explain, but it's just even the universe is going through cycles, and like everything is changing constantly. They talk about it like a river. Like life is like a river. It's always flowing, and it's never the same as it once was. It's always changing. How the stream changes, so does life, and so does even everyone's personal lives, which then leads to their belief in the cycle of life being suffering, because if life is full of sickness, illness, death, and all of those things, then of course, if there's no end to that, then life itself would be suffering. So the goal is to um, really stop craving the things that are impermanent, which gets you to that which is permanent, aka nirvana, which is like ultimate bliss. Does that make sense, Nick?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it does. And I think there's a lot of even similarities between Christianity and Buddhism, which we can get into more later. But do we talk at all about kind of the misconceptions with it, or
We can. I don't think we have it in our notes yet, but
um but yeah, even like because I think a lot of people they think of like they're just trying to avoid completely all desire and things of that nature. And Jonathan and I listened to this video of a what did he have?
a
Was it his
doctorate in
doctorate?
Buddhism, yeah,
Yeah, doctorate in
yeah,
Buddhism, and he was responding to a Christian who made these claims of comparing and contrasting Christianity and Buddhism. And it's not that they're necessarily trying to avoid craving in its totality, but that they're avoiding it in its unhealth. So he kind of brought up the example of like eating a brownie. Like eating a brownie and craving a brownie isn't wrong, and so you eat a brownie, it's fine. Eat a second one, it starts to hurt your tummy a little bit, is what he said. And then by the time you're at that third brownie, it just becomes unhealthy and it's undesirable. And so it's in that sense where they're trying to avoid desire. It's not that you can't have any desires. He talked about how Buddha would, teach people how to live a good life, how to um, create wealth, things of that nature. So it gives room for that, but it's in the sense that an overindulgence of these cravings and desires is where they try to avoid. And that
Hmm.
because those overindulgences is where you find suffering. So it's not that, you know, suffering is just completely unavoidable and that life is just this horrible and cruel thing. You know, you can live a good life according to a Buddhist, just you have to avoid and steer away from those overindulgences of your desires and the cravings that you feel.
Yeah, which is interesting because we would agree with a lot of that when it comes to like the understanding that those things, the desires that we have are impermanent when it comes to um like a brownie, like something like that, where it sounds great and you want that, but it's the understanding that that's not the ultimate craving and desire. That's what they don't want. And that's, we would also agree that yeah, that's not the thing that's going to make you happy and ultimately joyful. And so it's interesting how much we can agree on, but I think it's the worldview difference is just
Yeah.
radically different and is totally not uh, anything going along with scripture.
hmm Yeah. Even like karma is kind of similar because we believe in reaping what you sow. That you know, if you put effort into something, whether it's God rewarding you or just you know the reaping of you know your the effort that you're putting into something, and they believe in karma that the more good you do, the more good. I don't know if they necessarily just believe like I don't think they believe like the universe. I don't even know really. I didn't look into it a whole lot, I guess, in that. But that just that the more good that you put out, obviously, the more good things that you build up in your karma. And so it's similar even with that. But again, just that
But for
worldview.
them, sorry, for
No,
them,
you're good.
that's it's like they're building it up for the next life. So that way, like you can think of karma kind of like money for all the listeners. It's like you do a bunch of good things, you do your meditations, all of these things that they're supposed to do, and you kind of build up like a wealth of good karma. So then when you die, you kind of cash in that karma for a better position um, in life. So they have different like realms. And maybe we should have done like kind of their worldview at the beginning, but we're already into it this far. So they kind of have different like realms, and you could be born as a god in a heavenly realm, or like a spiritual being type of thing in a heavenly realm, which doesn't mean that you're like our Christian God, but more so just like an elevated being that enjoys heaven to an extent, but then eventually even that being's going to die. And then they have like our earth realm, which you can be born as a human or as a worm or as whatever. And then lower realms as well, like hell and things like that. And so you spend your karma on your next life to be either, you know, high in like a heavenly realm or as a wealthy human. Or if you don't have the good karma, then you can be an animal on this world or even lower than that in like a hell type realm. And so, yeah, it's interesting. Any
Yeah,
thoughts?
it's no, it's just yeah, a bit more nuances that go with it, and yeah, but
Yeah, of
we can
course.
keep moving with it.
Yeah. Yeah, we are uh we're not 100% experts, but we did some studies.
Yeah. And then, so another thing that's really important to Buddhists is meditation. And so the goal of meditation is to develop mindfulness and awareness, understand the true nature of reality, reduce craving, attachment, and ignorance, cultivate compassion, wisdom, progress toward enlightenment and liberation from the cycle of rebirth. And so, again, it's just a time where they empty their mind and just meditate and allow themselves to kind of just grow progress toward enlightenment. And even in this, I think is where they're able to kind of remember their past lives if they reach that certain point. Because I believe Buddha, at one point, he remembered like hundreds upon thousands of his previous lives, and upon achieving his ultimate enlightenment. And so, yeah, meditation is huge for them. It's where they grow and progress and do a lot of their where they get toward their liberation and enlightenment. But there are two main types of meditation when it comes to a Buddhist. So there's the samatha, the calm meditation, and this is where they develop concentration and that inner peace, that inner calmness. They focus on a single object, such as breath, and this trains their mind to become still and attentive. So it builds deep concentration. So it's kind of like training the mind to stop constantly wandering. So like for us, we go into prayer and you get distracted, things come on your mind. This samatha is training to prevent that from happening. So they're working to just be still, to just be focused. And so that's what that is. Then there is the dude, these are hard to pronounce, John. The vipassana, I believe is how you pronounce it. I think that was the best time I said it.
Nice.
This is an insight meditation. So it's to gain wisdom, insight into reality. And so the practitioners, they observe thoughts, emotions, bodily sensations, feelings, and the goal is to see that these are all impermanent, unsatisfactory, and without a permanent self. So meditation for them, it isn't worship. All right, most often it is not worship. Where to us, we would view meditation or prayer as a time of worship. Most Buddhists do not view meditation as praying to a god. Instead, it is just spiritual discipline for transforming the mind and character. Meditation itself is generally understood as a means of cultivating wisdom rather than communicating with the Creator. And so both Christians and Buddhists may use the word meditation, but again, here's that worldview, it just means differently. And so where the Buddhists, their meditation would include, again, just emptying their mind, focusing on being still, or focusing on how to overcome attachment, how to overcome emotion, physical desire. The biblical meditation is focusing on God's word, focusing on different Bible verses, different scriptures, things that God may have spoken over you, and kind of just focusing on that rather than emptying your mind into to something
very
else.
different.
Yeah.
Very different. And that's so important because sometimes, like, I think we've probably used the verb to meditate or something like that when we've talked about scripture and prayer and stuff. And it's like, you need to know the difference. We're definitely not talking about Buddhist meditation or anything like that. But like, be still and know that I am God. That's the type of thing that we're trying to do when we are being still, and we're not emptying our mind. We're filling our mind with the things of God and His Word and Him, the thinking about Him and how great He is and things like that. Just knowing Him rather than emptying our mind and trying to gain some kind of other spiritual insight or something like that. But then going on from that, they have the Eightfold Path. So they have the Four Noble Truths, which are kind of like the worldview, big picture. It's a lot about suffering, things like that. And then the Eightfold Path is something that they follow, which is right view, right intention, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. And so I won't go through all of them, like the details when it comes to them, but basically they are trying to live ethically, do things well, have a good understanding of life, and like the first one, understanding reality correctly by recognizing that the Four Noble Truths and the nature of suffering, kind of what those are. And so that's kind of the idea, that they are trying to do right things, live the right way, think the right things, and not be attached. I mean, attached to like negative attachments and desires and things like that. And one thing that stands out to me is the works. They have to do all of these things, and like their enlightenment is kind of, it's on them. They have to be the ones that are meditating, that are living rightly, gaining good karma, all of these things. Whereas Christianity, we are saved by faith, that we go to heaven, we experience God and experience life with God, not because of our good works, but because of our faith in Him. And that's, I think, is the biggest difference between the two. Any thoughts on the Eightfold Path?
Um, nothing, nothing really. I think it's pretty like self-explanatory. It's just kind of the rules that they try to live by, the things that they try to adhere to. So we'll get into some more of the core beliefs, core practices of Buddhists. So karma, we kind of talked about it. It's just actions that have consequences to influence one's future experiences and rebirth. So again, the more good karma you build up in this good life, the better your next life will be. But again, just use that wisely, because if you don't reach enlightenment in the next life after you build a bunch of good karma, you will have wasted all your good karma and be doomed in the next
Are you
life.
giving them advice on how to use their karma in a false religion?
All right,
Hey,
so next
just in
up,
case you guys need to know that.
yeah, well, I mean, you never know. A Buddhist might tune in. Just
Okay,
giving
go
them
ahead.
another idea of what to do.
Nice,
All
Nick. All
right.
right.
So next is rebirth. So rather than a single earthly life, Buddhism teaches a cycle of rebirth, samsara, until liberation or enlightenment is achieved. And so depending on the amount of good karma that you earned in your life, you could be reborn either as a heavenly being, an animal, be reborn into the hell realm. None of these are permanent. So you go to any of these realms, you spend your karma, whether it's a lot or a little. When you die, however much karma you built up puts you into that next category, whether you're an animal, a heavenly being, or sent into the hell realm, which is why I would just stay in that middle ground. You want to
Um,
take it from here, John?
Yeah, sure. Let's go. All right. So nirvana, the ultimate goal is nirvana, which is the end of suffering, craving, and the cycle of rebirth. They're getting out of that reincarnation cycle. Many believe that they will be able to experience ultimate bliss in nirvana, and that they'll even be able to help those who haven't reached enlightenment yet to their journey towards nirvana. Yeah. And then God. When it comes to God, most forms of Buddhism do not teach in God, in a creator God, definitely. They believe in like quote unquote gods in the heavenly realms, but those beings are not all knowledgeable or all powerful. They will eventually die and keep going in the cycle. So it's definitely not the same thing. And it's not like Hinduism, which believes in thousands and thousands of gods. It's which is kind of interesting about Buddhism. It's they don't believe in a god. It's kind of just all on them, that they could be higher or lower in the next life. Which is also interesting when it comes to like they don't know how the universe began or if it began and things like that. Buddha was uh focused a lot on the things that we can know, like suffering and life and death and things like that. So That's interesting. And even when it comes to the difference between Christianity and Buddhism, that right there helps a lot when it comes to believing in Christianity. Like all of the scientific things that we've learned in recent years or whatever point far, far, far more towards Christianity than Buddhism, because even like the laws of nature and stuff like that, when it comes to you, like all matter will eventually be like destroyed and like things run out of energy. It's not like a continuous cycle. And there was a beginning at some point. Like these are scientific things that scientists believe and have evidence to point to, and those all fit into Christianity, that there was a beginning and God created that beginning, and there will be an end and God will bring about the end. So those things would not be in Buddhism, which would just point towards our belief in a creator God, and his name is Jesus. What do you think about that?
No, I agree. That was one of the big issues that I kind of was coming up with when thinking about Buddhism. Um, because there's just a lack of a lot of history, lack of a lot of evidence and proof of, just a lot of the beliefs, the philosophies that they have. Um, and then again, yeah, just the biblical events, biblical accounts, things of that nature. There's a lot more historical evidence of it, a lot more, like you just said, scientific evidence of it. And then even because when one of the videos that we were listening to, he was talking about just like what you were talking about, how they're not so interested in just answering all these questions. And he used the analogy of like someone getting shot with a poison arrow, and the guy being shot was like, "Who shot me?" Like trying to figure it out or whatever, like what kind of arrow it was. And their philosophy is that it doesn't really matter what arrow. Like, why are you asking me all these pointless questions? You're poisoned. You need to get the antidote. You need to get, you know, whatever that poison is out of you. And I mean, it's an understandable kind of philosophy, but I think it doesn't. And they would say too that they have space to ask questions and to look for these things, but they're just not as focused on it. But then the guy that he was answering brought up the fact that it does matter because, like, uh, obviously this is all hypothetical, but there's different kinds of poisons, and I was even thinking because I'm into like animals and stuff, so I was thinking of like a snake. Like, there's a bunch of different venomous snakes, and the antidote to which venom it is so different. So it's not just that, a snake bit me and I need to get the venom out, but what kind of snake bit me? Or is it even a snake? Or was it a different venomous animal? Or was it a poisonous animal? Like, all these things do matter. And so, yeah, they're even just the worldview and just thinking of, answering these questions, like they do matter. And so the lack of it, the lack of these answers to these questions, I think does matter and points again toward Christianity, because Christianity and the Bible is not like the answer to, like, Bible's purpose isn't to answer all these questions, but even just having the Bible, just existing with God, growing with Him, you kind of develop and grow an understanding of kind of these, big life questions that everybody in the world has, except for Buddhists. But, um, but yeah, I think just, yeah, the worldview is very different, but I think what they kind of steer away from is intentional because they don't have any sufficient evidence for those things. So they're very, like, their religion's history doesn't provide any kind of answer, doesn't give any room for it. So I think it's kind of intentional for them to say, like, it doesn't really matter. Don't be asking these questions.
Yeah. So then going into a couple similarities with Christianity. Both obviously teach compassion towards others, kindness and generosity, self-control, caring for those in need, the importance of forgiveness, selflessness, all of these things. But I think the major difference is they do it for good karma, and so that way it can benefit them going into the next life. But Christians do it because we've experienced the love of God, the forgiveness of God, the generosity of God, and so we want to do that to other people and give other people those same things, so that way we can become more like God, and that way we can show other people who God is and invite them into that. And so I think that's totally different when it comes to motivations. And I think that's a very important distinction. And, I've never met a Buddhist. So, um, right to me right now, it sounds like it's kind of selfish, I guess, but that may not be the case. I don't know. I haven't met a Buddhist. Maybe they just do it out of the kindness of their heart and not for karma itself. I don't know. Any thoughts?
Yeah, well, I think from my understanding is that they're trying to work out that selfishness because I think
Mm-hmm.
like when you reach that true enlightenment, you don't even you don't want to reach enlightenment. Like you can't be working to obtain it and obtain
Mm-hmm.
it. You have to have like that even that desire I think is one that they have to put away with because it's like, you kind of like become this like I mean, this is just my own words. I don't think they would say it this way, but you kind of in order to enter in nirvana, you have to become like this other kind of being that doesn't have any selfish desire. And so, even just the desire to get into nirvana is a desire that they have to put away with. So,
Sounds tricky.
does it
Mm.
does.
Yeah.
And I think that's also why it's so hard for them because I don't think Buddhists really understand Christianity well. Um, because I was listening to a podcast and I don't know if I said this in this episode or if it was just while we were talking earlier. Um, but they view Christianity as like a point A to point B kind of religion where they are very much more on the journey kind of side, which I think is pretty wrong because in Christianity, we're not looking just to reach heaven. I would argue the Christians who are claiming claiming Christ just to enter in heaven as like a golden ticket to enter in those golden gates, that they're truly not following Christ or now I don't want to judge their eternal state, but I think it's very few people who have those mindsets are making it in. Um, but they think of us in that way that, we're just looking for an answer to get into heaven when reality, like you were saying, we're trying to love others because of how we have been loved. It's not that we're trying to get into heaven, but we've recognized who our creator is, who our father is, that we want to grow closer to him because of all that he's done for us, because of the sacrifice that Jesus made for us. It's not that, we're doing these things to work, to build up good karma or build up, uh, just a certain amount of good works to make it into heaven, but we're trying to grow closer and become more like Christ because of how he loved us first, not because we're trying to
Mm-hmm.
get into heaven. And I think that's not a point A to point B kind of mindset. That's a journey. Because our language is a faith journey. Like we talk about the ups and downs of our faith. And what is the phrase that PB would always say? Uh,
Um, Something about is like journey of sanctification
yeah,
or something like that.
something like that. But how there's ups and downs, but it's the journey. And yeah, just not that our end goal isn't to get into heaven, but as a journey. Even in heaven, we don't reach this full enlightenment type thing. Like even in heaven, there's still a journey of growing closer and closer to God in our relationship and in our knowledge of God. And so, yeah, I think they don't really understand um, the true Christian perspective and
Mm-hmm.
worldview.
Yeah. I feel like all the other religions we've talked about just have a faulty understanding of Christianity. Um, yeah. But I guess a lot of Christians have a faulty understanding of Christianity. Not like we have a perfect one, that's for sure. Um, but I guess that kind of brings us to wrap up when it comes to how would we witness to a Buddhist? Unless there's anything else you wanted to hit. I feel like we hit pretty much everything.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if we really touched on this, but one difference between Christian and Buddhist is that they're very internal. So everything that they do that they can achieve is all internally. They don't have any external forces really affecting them. Whereas for the Christian, God is the one who provides all of our all of our strength, everything that we need to become more like Him. So where
Yeah.
they meditate and do all these things, they're not asking for, Lord Buddha or any of the enlightened ones to strengthen them to, at least to my knowledge. I mean, there could be some certain sects of it that do that, but to my knowledge, most of them at least are all figuring it out on their own. Whereas for us, we ask God for strength, ask God to give us peace, to help strengthen our peace, to give us discipline to do certain things. And so, yeah,
They do have
I'd say that's
scriptures,
a big
though.
difference.
I'd
Yeah,
say
yeah.
that as a caveat. Um, but when it
But
comes
are
to like
they
their,
more? Isn't it more like Proverbs? Like it's just like wisdom things, or
I haven't read them personally. That's kind of how it sounded uh, when I read, I guess, some of them, but I don't know for sure. So I guess they have their scriptures, kind of what Buddha taught, and but then I mean it is like on their own when it comes to then actually putting it into practice, doing the things that they have to do to make it to enlightenment. And that's one of the things that when it comes to sharing the gospel with a Buddhist, um, I it seems from an outside perspective like it's just a trap that they keep working and working and working, doing all of these things without even knowing, are they going to make it into a better life in the next cycle and when they're reincarnated next. And so talking to them about salvation by faith and the grace of God and things like that, where he's so kind and he's so good and he's so loving. And all we have to do is believe in him and live for him. Is that would be, I feel like earth shattering for them, and hopefully I get to find out if that would be a good angle if I can talk to a Buddhist here soon. But I feel like that would be a good place to start, is just faith in Jesus, because it contrasts with their works and their doing all of these things to reach enlightenment. But that would be my first initial thought when it comes to the angle at which to talk to them about Jesus. What about you?
yeah, I think talking about the different philosophies, because again, I think they do just have such a poor view of what we believe and what why we do the things that we do. So I think even just talking about that, asking them questions about their religion, their journey, their walk, but then also sharing ours as well, and kind of just showing that different perspective, and even like what John was saying, just how different that is and earth shattering. Because again, like they're working to achieve, to do all these things, but like for us, it's not about that. It's not about working to grow all this good karma. And that is probably such a hard concept for them to understand, but that's also good for them to even just be open or be exposed to that. I also think talking about suffering is probably a huge thing, because suffering is so important to
Mm-hmm.
their belief and their religion. So talking about how suffering is to a Christian, how it's not that we're avoiding it or anything of that, but that it actually brings us closer to our God. That when we suffer, we're closer to Him than ever before, because He first suffered on our behalf, and that
Yeah.
He didn't run away from that suffering or anything. He ran toward it because of how much He loved us. And I think even just that alone, that a God would which I mean they know, obviously they more than likely they know the story and all this, but um, through conversations, obviously God opens up, uh, waters a seed, plants a seed, whatever he's got to do in uh, that whole process, he will do it. But just showing the differences and showing the genuine side of it, because again,
Mm,
I think they do just have very skewed idea of, even like I only listened to three different podcasts or YouTube videos, but each of them were all very similar on how they viewed it, and just that it's a point A to point B, um, and yeah, that we're focused on things that don't matter, but in reality, a lot of these questions that we're asking, they do matter, because not only um, are they just questions that are on the hearts of mankind, but they also reveal the accuracy or the evidence that Christianity has, just historically or scientifically.
mhm. Yeah, I think that would be a good place to start with that for sure. Is there anything else you'd like to add?
So before we got into this series, both of us were kind of like, we weren't really sure how it was going to go, how usually before a series, we're both really excited, pumped, because, the Christian theology is just more our realm. It's things that we're more interested in. But I think that this series is super important for us because I know we've kind of introed it a couple times, but I was listening to a sermon and this phrase, a pastor said it and it just hit me. It was when preparation meets opportunity. And that's what these kinds of episodes are all about. And I think we just lofty think of, opportunities that when they come, like, God will give us the right words to say or all these things, but it's so important to prepare for these moments. Like, yes, God will empower you, give you the right words to say, to pierce the heart of whoever you're talking to, but also it is important for us to prepare and do the work that we can, um, to be ready for those moments, because I've heard, um, I heard a story one time of this pastor. He heard of another pastor who doesn't do any sermon prep, and he just goes up and then God just speaks to him. And so the pastor who heard about that tried it out, and he got up on stage and he was just drawing blanks, and he looked
Oh
at
no.
and he asked God. He was like, why didn't you why didn't you speak to me? And he was like, I was trying to tell you to take some notes, or the sermon prep, to get ready for it. And so, the preparation is so important, because when the opportunity presents itself, you're going to need to be ready. And I don't want to meet a Buddhist, or I don't want to meet someone of another religion, another faith, and just rely on God to, obviously he can and he could, but what if, he you get to that point and he was saying to you that you should have been more prepared, or there's just
Hmm.
so many verses, so many examples of the Bible where it's teaching us that we have to be ready in and out of season. So this series might have not been the most exciting or the most, pretty or the easiest to listen to, but it is super important, because this is what we're here for. We're here to reach the lost, and uh, it's important to know why people believe what they believe, so that we can answer the questions that they're longing for,
Hmm.
because that's what all these are. They're just answers. They're human-made answers to problems that are higher than what we can come up with.
Yeah. And it's so important to understand where other people are coming from, especially when you're sharing the gospel, because, well, God can use like anything, right? But if you have a belief and just like a way of thinking that's totally different from me and who I'm used to sharing the gospel with, and I go with the same approach, it might not like translate well through culture as well as like if I was studied up and understood your culture, then I could come at the gospel from a different angle, which is awesome that the gospel can be talked about from different points of view, all speaking the truth, but just in a way that can help someone else understand who God is in a better way, which really is what we do. We're not just like walking up to someone and reading like all of the book of Luke, but we're kind of summarizing or pointing out different aspects of the gospel, so that way it can impact that person. So I think it's important to have different perspectives when it comes to that.
And I also think that as we are more prepared and more well versed in other religions, other philosophies, other people groups, I think divinely God will put you in positions to reach those people more often because you have an understanding of them, and hopefully as you build a better understanding, you build a softer heart for them as well. And so, yeah, when preparation meets opportunity, that's where you'll see a lot more fruit rather than if you just walked in willy-nilly. Obviously, God can do anything, but we also play a role in, God expects us to work in partnership with Him, not just to, be a genie and give you the right words to say in the perfect moments. Can happen, but we also have to be prepared.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. Is that it?
I think that's it.
All right. Thank you, everybody, for listening to the Simply Biblical podcast. Make sure you follow us on Instagram and whatever streaming platform you use, and tell a friend about it. If they're interested in other religions or anything that we've talked about previously, go send them one of the links. But thank you guys for listening to the Simply Biblical podcast, where our goal is that all people would know Christ through the study of His Word. We'll see you next time.